households has increased by 115% over the last 5 years, a new report says. And now a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24/7, and stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome back to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. And now our next story. A man threatened and then laughed at an MBTA bus driver with a knife last Friday after the operator told him to wear a mask while on the bus, according to transit police. The driver wasn't stabbed or injured, and police are now looking to identify and locate the suspect. The incident occurred at about 8:50 p.m. after the man boarded the bus near Boston Medical Center. The man subject ignored the driver's request and proceeded to speak on his cellular phone, police said in a release. According to the operator, the subject was apparently so troubled by the request to don a mask, he was telling the person on the other end of the call about it in an unpleasant terms, and at some point the male subject approached the operator and said, "Shut the F up," or he would stab him. After this threat is when the man showed the knife and attempted to assault the driver, according to police. Our next story. Boyle Heights. If you learned just one thing about Boyle Heights, a famously Latino neighborhood home to Mariachi Plaza, Shirley Smith hopes it's this: we were there. And she said, "We left our mark, although it is fading today in numbers and in memories." Smith is 85 years old, the daughter of a great migrations of Black people fleeing the segregated South. She grew up in Boyle Heights, once considered the Ellis Island of West Coast, home to Mexicans and Jews, Russians and Italians, people of Japanese descendants. She created a Facebook group, Black Boyle Heights, to preserve and archive the fragile history of the neighborhood's earliest Black residents and the ones who followed. And last Sunday, as Black History Month kicked off, she convened a virtual celebration of the old days, more than 50 people. They lauded musicians who grew up in the neighborhood, Hada Brooks, the queen of the boogie, and will.i.am, who grew up in the Estrada Court housing projects. They honored the lives of their elders, some whom have since died. They narrated the life story of John Wesley Coleman, one of Boyle Heights' earliest Black residents, known as the Employment King of Los Angeles. Today, there aren't many Black Boyle Heights residents left, just 1% of the population. The few times Black Anglo-noise made major news in this neighborhood were when families were firebombed in 1992 and 2014 by people who wanted them out of the Romana Garden housing projects. But that wasn't on the minds of the attendees Sunday afternoon as they reminisce over families they raised there just over the bridge from downtown LA and laughed over shared memories involving the neighborhood seamstress. How, why, and when did Black folks come to Boyle Heights? Smith asked during the gathering. Well, the California dream brought us out here. Our next story. The family of an honor roll student and star athlete said they want justice. Deshaun Hill Jr. played quarterback in North High in Minneapolis. Someone shot the 15-year-old after school on Wednesday. He had a beautiful smile and beautiful heart, very outgoing. His soul was priceless, his mother Tuesday. Shepard said, wearing Deshaun's leather jacket in the living room filled with messages of love. Deshaun's mother and older sister, Talina, demanded justice on Friday. They murdered my son. They murdered him. It's sad because he went to school and he never came home from school. Now he's at the morgue, Tuesday, Shepard said. The star quarterback at North Community High School was gunned down after school Wednesday. He never even got in a fight. That's why I don't understand why this even happened to him, Tuesday, Shepard said. His father showed WCCO inside his bedroom where shelves were filled with trophies and other athletic achievements. He was on the honor roll and applied for a job ahead of his 16th birthday, which would have been March 13th. Though these go to show you could do everything right as a parent and something could still happen to your kid. This goes to show you where we're living in right now is hell and where he's at is heaven. It doesn't get worse than that, Tuesday Shepard said. Now, without her only son, she hopes his legacy lives. I want them to remember his pretty smile and his dreads and his name, she said. Hill's basketball team, the North Polars, played Hopkins Saturday afternoon. They hope to pack the gym in Hill's memory. Our next story of the hour. A day before she was due to be evicted in November from her Atlanta home, Chanel King heard that she had been awarded about $15,000 in rental assistance. She could breathe again. But then the 43-year-old hairdresser got a letter last month from her landlord saying the company was canceling her lease in March, 7 months early without any explanation. I'm really pissed about it. I thought I would be comfortable again back in my home, said King, whose work dried up during the pandemic and who is now worried about finding another apartment she can afford. Here I am back up against the wall with nowhere to stand. I don't know what I'm going to do. Although the $46.5 billion emergency rental assistance program has paid out tens of billions of dollars to help avert an eviction crisis, some tenants like King who received help are finding themselves threatened with eviction again, sometimes days after getting the federal help. Many are finding it nearly impossible to find another affordable place to live. It is a Band-Aid. It was never envisioned as anything more than a Band-Aid. Aaron Willoughby, director of Clinton House Legal Resource Center Atlanta, said of the program, it's not solving an underlying problem, which is a lack of affordable housing. People are on the hook of rents they cannot afford to pay, she said. Simply finding something cheaper is not an option because there is not anything cheaper. People have to be housed somewhere. The National Housing Law Project, in a survey last fall of nearly 120 legal aid attorneys and civil rights advocates, found that 86% of respondents reported cases in which landlords either refused to take the assistance or accepted the money and still moved the evicted tenants. The survey also found a significant increase of landlords lying in court to evict tenants and illegally locking them out. Now, a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24/7. Stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. And now for our next story of the hour. A federal judge on Friday blocked the Biden administration's attempt to put greater emphasis on potential damage from greenhouse gas emissions when creating rules for polluting industries. The U.S. District Judge James Kane of Western District of Louisiana sided with the Republican Attorney General for energy-producing states, who said that the administration's action to raise the cost estimate of carbon emissions threatens to drive up energy costs while decreasing the state's revenue from the energy production. The judge issued an injunction that bars the Biden administration from using the higher cost estimate, which puts a dollar value on damages caused by every additional ton of greenhouse gas emitted into the atmosphere. President Joe Biden, on his first day in office, restored the climate cost estimate to about $51 per ton of carbon dioxide emissions after Trump administration have reduced the figures to about $7 or less per ton. Former President Donald Trump estimate included only damages felt in the U.S. Versus the global damages captured in higher estimates that were previously used under the Obama administration. The estimate will be used to shape future rules for oil and gas drilling, automobiles, and other industries. Using a higher cost estimate will help justify a reduction in planet warming emissions by making the benefits more likely to outweigh the expenses of complying with new rules, known as the social cost of carbon. The damage figures uses economic models to capture impacts from rising sea levels, recurring droughts, and other consequences of climate change. The $51 estimate was first established in 2016 and used to justify major rules such as clean power plans. Former President Barack Obama's signature efforts to address climate change by tightening emission standards for coal-fired power plants, in a separate rules imposing on tougher vehicle emission standards. On to our next story. A man who shot his ex-girlfriend at a Phoenix home earlier Friday ambushed the first officer on the scene, seriously injuring him, then opened fire on another police as they tried to rescue a baby that was left outside the door. The woman later died. In all, 5 officers were shot, including 4 who were wounded while trying to take the baby to safety. 4 more officers were injured by a shrapnel or a ricocheting bullet, police said. Of the 5 shots, 4 remain hospitalized. All of the officers were expected to survive, and the baby girl was unharmed. A baby is safe today because of our 4 Phoenix police officers, Mayor Kate Gallio said, at a news conference near the scene. The most seriously injured officer was the first to arrive at the home around 2:15 a.m. following a report of a woman shot. He was invited inside, Phoenix Police Sergeant Andy Williams said. As he approached the doorway, the suspect ambushed him with a gun and shot him several times. He said that officer was able to get back and get away to safety. Videos from the scene shows another man coming outside holding a baby and a shackle. The man put the shackle on the ground and then laid down the infant wrapped in a blanket between the shackle and the front door. He raised his hand to the surrenders while backing away from the house. After the man was detained, the officer approached the doorway to get the baby girl. The suspect fired more shots. The police returned fire when then led the suspect to barricade himself. 8 of the officers were wounded by ricocheting bullets or shrapnel in the exchange, Williams said. On to our next story of the hour, Russia and Ukraine. The Biden administration on Friday escalated dire warnings of a possible imminent Russian invasion of Ukraine, saying it could happen at any moment. Even as an emergency diplomatic efforts continue, U.S. officials say the United States is preparing to evacuate its embassy in Kyiv, and Americans in Ukraine are being told to leave within the next 48 hours. Adding to the scene of the crisis, the Pentagon ordered an additional 3,000 U.S. troops to Poland to reassure allies. A diplomatic option for averting war in Ukraine appeared to narrow, and the White House said President Joe Biden and Russian President Vladimir Putin will discuss the crisis by phone on Saturday. Biden has said the U.S. military will not enter a war in Ukraine, but he has promised severe economic sanctions against Moscow in concert with the international allies. Timing of a possible Russian military action remains a key question. The U.S. picked up an intelligence that Russia is looking at Wednesday as a targeted date, according to the U.S. official familiar with the findings. The official who would not say how definitive the intelligence was, and the White House publicly underscored that the U.S. does not know with certainty whether Putin is committed to an invasion. However, U.S. officials say a new Russian buildup of the offensive air, land, and sea firepower near Ukraine has reached a point where it could invade on a short notice. The U.S. officials told the Associated Press late Friday that the State Department plans to announce early Saturday that virtually all American staff at Kyiv embassy will be required to leave. The State Department would not comment. On to our next story, New Zealand. Some countries might send in a riot squad to disperse trespassing protesters. In New Zealand, authorities turned on the sprinklers and Barry Manilau initial move to try to flush out several hundred protesters who have been camped on the Parliament's grassy grounds since Tuesday had little effect. The protesters who have been voicing their oppositions on coronavirus vaccine mandates responded to the soaking form of the sprinklers by digging trenches, installing makeshift drain pipes to divert the water. Then a downpour hit Saturday. Their numbers only grew. Protesters brought in a bale of straw, which they scattered on the increasingly sodden grounds at Parliament. Some shouted, others danced. One group performed an indigenous Maori haka. By evening, Parliament Speaker Trevor Mulland had come up with a new plan to make the protesters uncomfortable. using a sound system to blast out vaccine messages. Barry Manilon's song and an 1880s earworm hit, Macarena, on a repeated loop. Protesters responded by playing their own tunes, including the Twister Sisters' We're Not Gonna Take It. Protests began when a convoy of trucks and cars drove Parliament from around the nations, inspired by protests in Canada. At first, there were more than 1,000 protesters, but the numbers dwindled as the week wore on, before growing again on Saturday. Police have been taking more hands-off approach since Thursday, when they arrested 122 people and charged many of them with trespassing or obstruction. Police who have been wearing protective vests but haven't been using riot gear or carrying guns had tried to slowly advance on the protesters, but that resulted in a number of physical confrontations. A video of two female officers briefly dragging a naked woman by her hair from amid a scuffle went viral. And now a short break from the daily English news of Millennium News 24/7, and stay tuned.
Millennium TV, bridging communities worldwide. We broadcast diverse international content from Europe, Asia, Africa, and now right here in the USA. Watch us via Roku on your smart TV. Submit your own content to 1530entertainmentllc@gmail.com. Download the Millennium TV app from the App Store to stream our shows anywhere, anytime. Millennium TV.
Welcome to Millennium News 24/7 Daily Local News Update. And now our next story of the hour. Sitting under the hot sun, hungry women and children await food aid in a camp on the outskirts of Somalia's capital, Mogadishu. They have walked for days, fleeing the drought now ravaged a large part of rural Somalia. Their growing ranks are expected to swell further in the coming months as the Horn of Africa region faces its worst drought conditions in decades. This week, the United Nations World Food Program warned that 13 million people in the region, including parts of Ethiopia and Kenya, face a severe hunger in the first quarter of 2022. Immediately, assistance is needed to avoid a major humanitarian crisis, the agency warned. The Horn of Africa has long been vulnerable to the drought and hunger conditions often exacerbated by armed violences. Somalia's government in November declared a state of humanitarian emergency due to the drought, with the worst affected parts including the south-central area of Lower Juba, Gedo, and Lower Shabelle regions. The impacts on families is being felt more severely this season due to the result of multiple prolonged droughts and quick successions, a worsening security situation, desert locust infestations, soaring food prices, reduced remittances, and less money committed by donors. The aid group Save the Children said earlier this week that the drought in Somalia, a survey in November covering 15 of Somalia's 18 regions, found that majority of the families were now going without meals on a regular basis. It said in a statement, in Somalia, 250,000 people died from hunger since 2011, when the UN declared a famine in some parts of the country. Half of them were children. The WFP has said it needs 327 million to look after the immediate needs of 4.5 million people over the next 6 months, including in Somalia. Somali leaders also have been trying to mobilize local support. Many have responded. A task force set up early this month by Prime Minister Mohamed Rubel collects and distributes donations from businesses, communities, as well as Somalis in the diaspora. Some of what they give feeds hundreds of families residing in the camps, such as the Anatorli, home of about 700 families. On to our next story. Russia again and Ukraine. With Russia carrying out a massive military buildup near Ukraine and West roundly rejecting Moscow's security demands, a window for diplomacy in this crisis appears to be closing. But even as Moscow continues to bolster its forces and hold sweeping war games, President Vladimir Putin is keeping the window open for more negotiations in a calculated game of the brinkmanship intended to persuade Washington and its allies to accept Russia's demands. The West fears that Russian invasion of Ukraine may be imminent, while Russia maintains it has no plans to do so, but wants its security concerns addressed. Here is a look at the Kremlin strategy in a standoff. Russia wants U.S. and its allies to keep Ukraine and other former Soviet nations from joining NATO, refrain from putting any weapons near Russia, and roll back the alliance forces from Eastern Europe. Washington and NATO rejects those demands as a non-starter, but they also are offering to discuss possible limits on missile deployments, a greater transparency of military drills, and other confidence-building measures. Putin has yet to deliver Moscow's formal response to the Western proposal, but he has already described them as secondary and warns that he wouldn't take no for an answer on his main demands. He countered the Western argument about NATO having an open door policy by arguing that it threatens Russia's and violates the principle of the indivisibility of security enshrined in an international agreement. With the West rejecting its key demands, the Kremlin has raised the stakes by massing over 100,000 troops near Ukraine and carrying out a series of military maneuvers from the Arctic Ocean to the Black Sea. On to our next story. A judge on Friday ordered protesters at a Ambassador Bridge over the U.S.-Canadian border to end the 5-day-old blockade that has disrupted the flow of goods between the two countries and forced the auto industries on both sides to roll back productions. It was not immediately clear when or if law enforcement officers would be sent in to remove the demonstrators who parked their pickups and other vehicles in the bumper-to-bumper protest against the country's COVID-19 restrictions and an outpouring of fury towards the Prime Minister Justin Trudeau in his Liberal government. The Chief Justice Geoffrey Morwetz of Ontario's Superior Court said during a virtual hearing that the order will be effective at 7 p.m. to give protesters time to leave. Windsor police immediately warned that anyone blocking the streets could be subjected to arrest and their vehicles may be seized. The news was met with defiance by protesters at the Ambassador's Bridge, and an unidentified person grabbed the microphone and addressed them, asking if they wanted to stay or leave when the deadline rolled around. By a show of applause, it was agreed they would stay. Okay, the man said, let's stand tall. The protesters responded by singing the Canadian national anthem. The crowd later grew in size and intensity, and with flags waving and frequently chants of freedom, more patrol cars moved in around the site, and police handed out leaflets warning that the state of emergency would come into effect at midnight. Now to our last story of the hour. People are tired. Georgia Senator Raphael Warnock said in an opening ad for his re-election campaign. There's not a face mask to be seen in the Democrats' video montage of scenes across Georgia, as he goes on to say people that are wondering when things will go back to normal, and at the same time not knowing what normal even means anymore. The ad reflects on the shifting narrative on COVID-19 restrictions across the country. Democrats are now increasingly supportive of easy mandates as they struggle to address voters' frustrations with the lingering pandemic. They're hoping a shift in policy would serve to blunt the incoming political attacks with the midterm elections, when control of Congress is at stake, now less than 9 months away. But their appeals for a return to normalcy, both on symbols and practice, are putting new pressures on President Joe Biden, more than a year after he was sworn into office, pledging to bring about an end to the pandemic. The virus persistence has taken a toll on Biden's approval in midterm elections year as COVID-19 restrictions and mask wearing requirements move to a forefront of the nation's culture war. After months of sparring with Republican governor for standing in the way of public health measures like face covering and social distancing, the sudden shift on parts of the Democrats in recent days has caught the White House officials off guard and left them seemingly out of sync with their own party. And this was the daily local news update of Millennium News 24/7. Log in to get the latest news. All of our social networking sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, is Millennium News 24. Also, our YouTube channel is News Channel M24. Viewers now on both network broadcasting Androids and iOS devices, Apple TV, Roku TV, Amazon Fire TV, also all smart TV platforms. Please enjoy our entertainment and latest news and views. Our Millennium TV app, Millennium TV USA, Millennium News Google, www. Millennium News 24/7. Repeat, www.millenniumnews24.com. Sorry. Stay tuned with Millennium News 24, and thank you for watching.